Jeff says back.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Pat.
Hey, Chris.
Good to see you again, as always.
Thank you. Same here. Same here, Chris. Very, very much so.
In our Holy Compost, maybe we could dive right into some of the things that we have been talking about before.
Sure.
About well, why don't you frame it, because it's kind of more in your bag of tricks than mine.
Okay. Well, so going to see a person who offers, I guess I would call it resonance training, or learning to have resonance with self. And the reason is because I'm in a challenging relationship with someone I really care about. And we continue to have these, I call them skirmishes to downplay them, but they're more than skirmishes. They're atomic wars. No, they're not that big. But in any case, so this person, I'll tell you, her first name is Leah, offered yesterday when I met with her on a Zoom call that we could tap into, if I was comfortable to do so, into perhaps two very succinct and specific parts of my psyche, and that we could have those two parts speak with one another. And I knew in my mind I wanted to call forth the sort of part of me that engages in work with you and what we talk about, which I said, it's when I'm flying high. And she says, okay, well, maybe that's a name you might use for that part of you. And I said, yeah, flying high is good. And then I said, and then very quickly, I said, the other part of me, of course, is scaredy cat. I mean, I didn't have to think about it because that's an old term I think we used in the 50s. So she's a scaredy cat. So scaredy cat was going to be this other part of me that often shows up in this relationship and it takes control. Well, I don't know if it takes control, but it comes very forward and reacts very unhelpfully to communicate. I mean, it's just a very reactive part of me. And so she then guided me through an exercise to have these two roles, these two parts of me talk with one another. And one would talk, the other would listen. Oh, and this is important because she says, you have to change each time you become one or the other, you need to change your posture or your seat and I had a necklace on. So when I was flying high, I had my peace symbol down here. And when I wasn't, I threw it over my shoulder when I was scaredy cat. And we did this exercise for a good 20 minutes, at least, maybe a little more. And these two parts of me were allowed to speak, express themselves. And then the listening part would then say what they heard. And then they could also give some comments about where they were coming from. It was very, very powerful. And I mean, I really distinctly felt two parts of me conversing, and the flying high me, the what I like to consider the empathic, compassionate part of me was very able to hear and assist and support this scaredy cat part of me. It was
So can I interrupt you?
Sure.
So that's a critical piece, that one piece of you was able to nurture the other. How did that happen? What's the root of that?
Wow, that's a good question, Chris. It felt to me as though the flying high part of me had a little more, I don't want to, how do I call it? I had a little more substance, which was great. Because I didn't, certainly wouldn't have been great if scaredy cat said, "Oh, be quiet, flying high. You don't know what you're talking about." But the flying high was just had a little bit of an edge over the scaredy cat, and I don't mean that in a arm wrestle sort of way. I mean that in an understanding sort of way.
More substance.
more substance and more, yeah, substance is a great word for it, in a little more voice, actually, a little more voice. So that was good. And you know, I mean, I can remember at one point saying, near the end of this exercise, she asked, what is there anything, last things that either of these parts of you want to say? And flying high, I forget if Scaredy, I think Scaredy Cat spoke first, and you know, said something like, well, I sure hope you're gonna show up when I need you, you know, because I I'm lost without you. I'm chopped meat or whatever without you, and I'm very afraid. But when you're there, then I'm less afraid. And so then, of course, Scaredy Cat, excuse me, Flying High, had a chance to respond, and that is when Leah offered this other piece around a couple of phrases. One of them was acknowledgement, building resonance with Scaredy Cat, being able to say to Scaredy Cat, you know, of course you're scared. I know that you are, and I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay right here.
Building trust.
Building trust. And I can actually feel emotion coming up in me now as I speak of this.
Well, because you're being kind to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
unusual.
well, but it's very, very hard to come by in this culture, because we're a culture of um
Bootstraps.
what's that? Bootstraps,
Bootstraps.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps without anyone's help, which is really just ridiculous.
Of
And
course.
also, you know, there's somehow something really wrong with supporting oneself in our culture. As a matter of fact, we're sort of trained to be against ourselves.
Well, certainly never to give ourselves a break.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's other things you've got to take care of before you get to that. I mean, there's a way long list of things that must be taken care of
Yeah,
before.
like the perfect house and the perfect career and the perfect child
And being very, very nice to others, even when they're hurting you, and not having a way to manage what you can do when you're being hurt. Having no skill set. So this exercise with Leo was very powerful, because even though I certainly, you know, intellectually understand, you know, one should be good to themselves, even if the culture says not to. Intellectually, I can get that, but I've never felt it so somatically and deeply in myself that it is okay. It is okay to take care of myself.
well, it's really holy. It's really a sacred action
Yes.
to take care of ourselves, because we're 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 taking care of the God within. I mean, we are God. You know, we are our DNA. We share DNA with God, and um, and when we're punishing ourselves, we're punishing God.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think the way you unpack that is so important for all of us um, to try to start processing this process uh, for ourselves. And if there's anything that we're all suffering from in differing degrees, it's lack of self-love, I think. I mean, I think, and this is anything but selfish, anything but self-centered. Self self Self-love is loving the holy, loving the wholeness that's within us. And
Absolutely.
we when you're around someone who loves themselves, don't you feel buoyed or don't you want more of what they've got?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I just think that this is a ginormous s- realization and step that you've just been through. And
Yeah.
I think spreading it around like butter, is really important.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Yeah, I would never tire of anyone um, talking about how they take care of themselves.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of my techniques is when I'm in a situation that is going south and is making me uncomfortable. Well, of course, it feels like a tornado has hit in my psyche.
Hmm.
And depending on who's on the other end, like if it's somebody that I really love, it's it's incredibly intense
Yeah.
tornado. If it's
Hmm.
somebody with customer service or, the plumber, uh, not so bad.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and if it's something in between, like, I don't know, maybe a spiritual teacher or what could be in between? Somebody that you want to be with, that your expectations are that something good will come out, and then all of a sudden it goes in the other direction.
Right.
Um, so my little technique is to ask myself, is this what you want for yourself?
Mm.
That's really a pivotal question that I've been able to um
Tell more
it
about
what's
tell
that?
more about tell more about that question. Is this what you really want for yourself? Tell me more about that because
Well,
I want to make sure I'm clear on it.
I mean, I visualize myself with a diagnosis that I've got 3 months to live, uh, or just on my deathbed, whatever, because we're all going to be there.
Hmm.
Um, and there's this retrospective of my life that comes upon me,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I say to myself, did you do this the way you wanted to do it? Did it um
Mm.
did you could you have done that differently?
Right.
Is this the way you want it to go?
Right. Right.
And it's just like, okay, I don't want to look back at my life. And I've said this because I mean, my father died when I was 14, so and then my mother was tried to kill herself on alcohol right after that. So I had this mortality issue um front and center when I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And I was also just surrounded by a lot of um deep thinkers because my father was a minister and we had a lot of clergy people in our sphere. Um and I want to live my life the way I want it to be. I didn't want it to be an accident. I didn't want it to be whoops.
I
Um
decline that. That shouldn't come through. I have my phone off, but anyway,
that's
sorry.
okay. Um so yeah, I don't know where even how I got onto that. Oh, how do I do
Yeah,
that?
what did you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been doing the is this what you want for yourself question when I'm in a low or moderate tornado, emotional tornado. When I'm
Mhm.
in a full-blown tornado, I'm just paralyzed
Yeah. Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, I'm not guessing, but I'm hearing more and more about this polyvagal theory, not theory, but truth around how they call it the reptilian brain or the reptilian response. And even that, though, can be assuaged. but it takes skill building around
Right.
what
And
I,
how what I've noticed is that the skill building, it's not fast, it's slow
no,
because
it's
you're reprogramming the hardwire stuff.
the neural pathway. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But it was important enough to me. I started doing this when uh let's see, it was probably in my early 40s
Mm-hmm.
when I started doing this.
Yep. Same
Because
here. Yep.
the school psychologist at the kids nursery school said that the kids inherit their parents' self-talk,
Mm,
and it really, 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 it was like a bolt of lightning for me
mm-hmm.
that I had to clean up my self-talk. And it was also um I was I was ready to hear it, but I didn't have any idea that it wasn't even on my radar. And then this guy comes along and says, kids inherit their parents' self-talk, and it just it was it completely changed my life in that moment. And I decided that I was going to monitor my self-talk and then make my self-talk reflect my values, my life values.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it took years. It took, and I'm still doing it,
Sure.
but I'm doing it, this much instead of this much.
Right. Right.
But it was a huge turning point in my life, and I think it turned my life from um, a place where I was a little unstable and unsure to a place
Mm-hmm.
where I really wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and this is what you're talking about. You're explaining the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've probably had other wake up calls and sometimes I answer the phone. Sometimes I say, no, too tired too tired or too busy or
Go to
whatever.
voicemail, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll listen to that maybe. So you said 40s. I'm only going to mention this because I've read on this too a little bit that certainly anybody can begin to look at the path they're on earlier than their 40s, but it's quite common that the 40s are sort of this turning point in the human life of am I gonna get real yet? So I got sober at 43. I think I've told you that, Chris. And so I know that was sort of a major turning point. Not just the putting down alcohol, of course, that's huge, but the 12-step program, which you and I talk about on, off and on as we meet, and this and getting the idea. I remember getting the idea is the 12 steps were being spoken about. Oh my God, this thing is going to be about me.
Right.
Oh no, I thought I could get through life without it ever being about me.
Well, and also I think people go into the 12-step program thinking that they can change the alcoholic.
Yes, yes,
And what happens is you end up working on yourself
yes,
so that you can become stronger, so that you can have more self-knowledge, so that you can support yourself when
yes,
times are hard. Yeah.
absolutely. It's the old I found a problem and it's me, or I forget who said it, what historical figure we know we found the enemy and it is us. It's so interesting that because we live in such an externalized culture, that we meet ourselves out there. Excuse me, we meet our not ourselves, we meet the persona of ourselves out there. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, something else is going on, you know. In the big book, I think it says Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the persona that we have for the, the general population, and then the Mr. Hyde that we bring out with our family and close.
Right. And that's classic, of course, and
Yes.
true for all of us, but it's not like one is bad and the other is good. So
That's true.
I believe that we do need the persona to protect our vulnerability.
Yes. Yes,
And
absolutely.
and because our vulnerability is very, very tender, and if we do need to protect it. And that's one of the
Totally.
ways we protect it without even knowing it, is to have these two, public persona and private persona.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And if your life went anything like mine, I think this is very common. As children, we don't have that clear yet. We don't have that developed. And I remember, being what I guess might be called like maybe a little kooky, or whatever the term might have been. And eventually recognizing I had to draw that kookiness in. The kookiness was probably a very real and creative part of myself, and perhaps even a holy part of myself.
Yeah. What made you call it kooky?
I just think that I think I have a yeah, that's a good question. Okay, I guess I could say that I'll say what's on my mind. And I've learned how to do that more carefully, and of course that's good. But I think in the growing years, I really was very, very careful about how I presented myself, in such a way that I was just almost, as a lot of people call this, the chameleon, where, okay, let me see what this situation is, and I'm going to adjust. I got to change my color, my spots, whatever, and not raise any hackles here.
And what
So,
age was that?
oh, I think I did it. Probably just pre-puberty to when I got sober. It changed, it morphed,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I think adolescence is, can remember saying to somebody, I'll change for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's like, to me, with my, with um, with the knowledge and understanding and grace that I have in me now, that is sacrilegious, because,
Yeah,
right now the theme is, I'm what you get.
yeah,
Take it or
yeah,
leave it.
yeah, yeah. And thus the draw for us to have these conversations, I think. And um and I'm seeing these conversations, these kind of, by conversation I mean an engagement, a connection, more and more in people, at least in my experience. Now, we could talk about that another time, about the energy, and the energy that this is. And it's like somebody that met me, or you perhaps, might say, too heavy, I mean, I just, please spare me. So, but in spite of that, interestingly, I think we find this draw happening between people. There's all these new things, the story that reconnects. People are wanting to return to their roots, because they're finally noticing, or I was finally, I'll just speak for myself, noticing how unrooted I am. Like, it doesn't take much to blow me over, and it's like, wait a second, I want to be more rooted in something that has depth and weight and meaning. And of course, we use the word God. You can use whatever you want, but we use God, and the Father, the benevolent one,
The mother.
the mother, the universal intelligence, the all that matters,
The ultimate mystery.
the ultimate. We got a million names for it, and it doesn't matter which we call, but what we know is it is what gives our life meaning and depth, and without it, wow. I'm gonna say that might be why I drank, because I felt separated from source. I felt separated from the reason I'm here, which is to love. And I want it to be me too.
What's that?
And I want me in that. I want me in that. I want to love me too.
Well, I mean, you and I are both a piece of God. So when we don't see that, it's not even a connection. It's
reality.
Alchemy. Is that what you said?
Reality.
Oh, reality. I was going to say alchemy, but yeah, it's just a reality.
Yeah.
It's not a connection. It's a reality.
Right.
Because connection implies that there are two things coming together.
Right.
But there's no separation between us and God.
Right. The only thing I would say about that is I certainly felt at the end of my drinking that there was a separation. Now, whether there was or wasn't, I can't. I felt there was is the word chasm?
Mm-hmm.
That at some point during my drinking career, and it was fairly early on, before I would even think of myself as an alcoholic, more of a problem drinker, or of making a decision, of being at a crossroads in my late 20s, I'd say, a decision to do something that I knew was wrong.
Okay, so back up a second. Can you just do that last sentence over again?
I don't know what it was.
Making a decision to do something wrong.
Yeah. And knowing, and really, like, I can even picture where I was. I was on a street. I was near a telephone pole with a light on it. And it was in where I lived in Quincy, Massachusetts. And making a decision to do something wrong. And at that moment, separating from
now,
yep.
Do you think that the separation happened before or after the decision to do something wrong?
It's this exact same moment.
Like,
At that moment.
Well, and they say so the root of the word sin is separation.
Sure.
So I think we've got that all screwed up in our culture. Our Judeo-Christian, or maybe just Christian. I'm not sure, because I'm not an expert in either one, but certainly less of an expert in Judaism, which I regret. But we okay, so I need to go back to the separation thing. So
sure.
I think that my theory is that as soon as so Jesus, after the resurrection, Jesus Jesus' disciples were spreading the word, and they were just like little groups of 2 people, 6 people, 10 people getting together on a regular basis to talk about this guy who changed their life. And then all of a sudden, the church buildings started to go up, within several hundred years or maybe more. And as soon as there's a building, there's a board of directors, and there's a budget, and there's committees, and there's this and there's that. And all of a sudden, there's just all this real world stuff that starts. Maybe they're weeds from in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that the idea of sin was basically a marketing tool
Mm,
to
mm,
keep people sort of repressed and in line and
mhm,
writing
mhm.
checks to the church to keep it
And,
going.
and in fear, let's not forget that.
And in fear. Yeah, right.
And when people are in
So
fear, they're easy to control.
right. So the current um the current definition of sin is some kind of thing that we do wrong,
Hmm.
but it really is separation. It's
Yeah.
separation from our maker, from our creation, from our
Yep.
creator, from the great
Yep.
mystery, the beloved.
Yep.
And you just explained it so beautifully with this, the decision to do something wrong created the separation
Hmm.
from you and God.
Absolutely. And once that separation is clear, as it was, as I felt it in myself, then the alcohol that was just sort of on the periphery of an issue for me became front and center, because unless I could have these reprieves of using alcohol and fooling myself into believing that I came back together, because that's the sense one gets. At least that's the sense I got when I used alcohol. I'm okay right now. I'm okay right now. I was not okay, but
Uh-huh.
I felt it. I felt this warm, drowsy kind of a little bit, not a little bit, removed from myself, and those things that felt, tremendously uncomfortable within me, because I had cast aside something. I had cast aside a term I might use as my moral compass. My you can call the moral compass God too, if you'd like. And I said, I got this. I got it. All right, I got it.
So
You can just move over out of the driver's seat. I'll take over from
yeah,
here,
yeah.
and I'm going to crash us.
Pat's in charge. Move over, God. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I had a question in my mind, but it's gone. It'll come back.
Yeah.
Oh, it's powerful
So
stuff. Yeah. So
it
I think
totally is.
the sin thing is we should really devote a whole Holy Compost session to sin, because my feeling is that sin is, I don't know, it's such a loaded subject. And I think that when people think about religion, I think sin is a big part of it. And it really is completely misdirected, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Completely
Well, I
misdirected.
mean, I think I've told you that I converted to Catholicism when I was 15, only because my brother uh, had impregnated a Catholic girl. We were Congregationalists, and that parent of that Catholic girl said, "Your son," to my parents, "your son will not marry our daughter unless he converts." And then my brother was going to convert, and I said, "Me too, me too." Um, so we converted, and to get to the word of sin, and the reason I brought this story up is, I learned so much about sin in the Catholic religion, like, the mortal and the venial and the unforgivable, and then going into the booth and the priest cleaning that slate for you, as long as you went up to the front of the church and did your fathers and Hail Marys and what was the big prayer? Oh, we can't think of it. Anyway, yeah, so that's really you're inundated with that in the Catholic religion, and I got a taste of that, so yeah, it was like the whip, like, whew, if you wanted to stay in good graces with God, you needed to clean up all those sins. And sometimes even thinking something could be considered, just having a thought.
Yeah, so good opportunity to really bash yourself, right?
Oh boy, it was something
I mean,
else.
you just really did. It's almost as if the system was set up for poor self-esteem.
Mm,
And but so that's what led me to think that the idea of sin was really a fundraising or a marketing technique, because as long as you keep people oppressed with how bad they are,
mm,
and there's a million other things that come into play, not the least of which is usually your acceptance within the community was very, very tightly tied into the church that you were at. Because if you were in a
yeah,
small town, there was probably one church.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, the town I grew up in outside of New York City had 5 congregational churches and 4 Episcopal churches and 7 Catholic churches. So, but most towns had one church. So if you disobeyed, or if you estranged yourself from the church, either psychologically or spiritually or morally, you were separated from your community.
Sure.
And people can't, human beings are herd animals.
Yes,
They need community,
yes,
period.
yes.
There
Yeah.
there are very few people who can survive without community.
I was just thinking what popped in my mind when you were talking just now was that this sin thing that people become aware that so and so's, lost their their way. That the gossip that comes out of that. And so like I have such an abhorrence of when people get together, and I don't get together with these people anymore because I'm just not willing to sit around and talk about others. And to so that's the sin thing. Like, they've sinned, now we can gossip about them. Not they need help, let's see what we can do for them. So
Let's
it's a
see how we can
separator.
support them.
Yeah, it separates people. Sin
Right,
separates people.
right. And it's, I don't know, I'm not sure if it was really done that way intentionally or not, but that's the way it happened. I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta, it's just a very insidious, nuanced, psychic phenomenon that happened
Mhm.
that made us hate ourselves
Yeah.
and think that we were beyond redemption.
Yeah.
And when I say redemption, um, that's a pretty intense word for me.
Yeah, it's loaded. It's a little
Yeah,
loaded.
it is. And I
Yeah.
think that the root of to redeem, I mean, it's so I get redeemed on a daily basis when I do my thought observations, which is what we started talking about before.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
been just an integral part of my daily life, is to observe what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and this is a spiritual exercise that it's imperative that I do this spiritual exercise on a daily basis so that I can grow, that I can um, feed the intimacy of my connection with God.
Yeah.
Um, because when I say, okay, what do I want out of life? When I do my sort of, not inventory, but when I just have a moment of clarity about what I want out of life, I want God to be, I was going to say I want God to be in every moment of my life. God is already in every moment of my
Right.
life. What
Right.
I want to do is be aware of that
Yes.
and
Yes.
operate on that plane, because there's nothing that can go wrong if that happens. And only only life only life and happiness and fulfillment can come from that kind of communion.
Totally. Totally. And I know you agree with this, that it's only in the present moment. When we stay in the present moment, which of course, again, we are kind of up against that, the pull of the cultural external, pull, and then the worrisome past and the anxious future and da 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 da. I mean, yeah, and all the while, God waiting in the moment. Wonder when they'll be back. You know.
Well, and I often think that God has just infinite patience because, and for instance, yesterday I spent most of my day um, in a frame of mind that I wouldn't wish on anyone, full of superficiality and judgment and the examination of sort of minuscule details that didn't matter.
Do you want to say why that you think that was happening? What was behind that?
Oh boy,
You?
really good question. Really good question. I'm gonna make a note to myself to think about that because nothing's coming to me right now, but I would like to sort of examine
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
you raise a good point. I mean, this is a good illustration of how, at least for me, um, there can be no good reason for being swept away by minutia.
Mm, mm.
But
Let's look at that though, Chris. Maybe there is a good reason. Let's like we've been trying to do here, look a little deeper into that because it has. I'm imagining it has a purpose. Is it a good purpose or a bad purpose? Who knows? But maybe we'll do the non-dual view that it's both.
let's
You know?
do it. I mean, I love the idea, and it pulls me out of my rut.
Yeah, yeah, the blame shame thing that we
Yes.
can just go to so quickly. So, maybe there's some kind of, I don't know, I'm just guessing here. Something is coming. Maybe there's some kind of way station or something that, yeah, I don't know. It sounds like I'm looking for an excuse to worry.
No, I
Uh,
love it.
yeah, so maybe in that way station, we go there to remind ourselves how much we need God, or I mean, I don't know, I'm just guessing. I got to go to the way station because I've forgotten how important God is. Let me go there for a while and roll around in the muck. So maybe it has its purpose. Maybe, I mean, it
You mean
sounds
the
like
distractions have their purpose?
the distractions or the coming up superficial, like you said, superficial place, worrying and thinking and, trying to pull the levers and, if I only, whatever, that that is probably the most uncomfortable place we can go to. And so, maybe it has its purpose because we're sort of drifting maybe in some way. And then it's like, oh boy, I got to go to the way station. Oh geez. I got to go down there now and be with, oh Lord, oh Lord. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, as you said. And then we just tire ourselves out. We're just like, oh my God. Oh, right. Okay. I'm gonna start an hour farther right now. So because I think one of the things that I've learned when speaking with you is that it all has purpose. We're not always clear on that, what it is, and we sort of kind of quantify our purposeness, qualify it rather. And let's think maybe it all has its purpose,
Right.
you
I mean,
know?
I love that you brought me kind of around to that again because even though even though we may not know what the purpose is,
Right.
the process I went through yesterday of having almost no good thoughts. I mean, almost
Mm.
none of the things I value was I thinking about. So, but that is so typical of being human. I mean, it's such a human thing to do that. And I think for the first 45 years of my life, maybe more, that's how I lived. I
Yeah.
I was I don't know if you've ever had a puppy, but the puppies we've had, they yank you around.
I
You
have.
put him on the leash and he's going here and then
Yeah.
he's going there and oh my God, I better keep up with him. That's how I feel about my ego. I just my ego is yanking me here and yanking me there. And I mean
Yeah.
it's not bad. It's just not how I want to live.
Right. 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 But sadly, or whatever, maybe not sadly at all, that is the human experience. And
Yes.
without the dark or the shadowy place that you seem to be explaining, this place where like, oh geez, blah, blah, blah. There's no light. I mean, this is the contrast, and so that I like that non-dual approach to things, that it's the it's
Yeah,
the and.
and maybe the day that I had yesterday was not bad at all. Maybe there was some hidden lesson or hidden wisdom or hidden something that, like I'm talking to you about it
The
today.
pearl, the
It
pearl,
could be the
the
pearl of great
pearl.
price. Yes.
That's
And
right.
and I think what most people do who are starting out meditation, or many people
Hmm.
do when they're starting out meditation, is to judge themselves by how little time they actually spend in that holy place.
Right. Yep.
And it's
Yep.
just, I don't think anybody's got it right. I mean, I've been meditating for um, over 25 years, and
Hmm.
I have never gotten to the place where I thought I would get to,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like 20 minutes of complete emptiness with God.
Right. Because we're in a culture that always has to have a goal. The goal. And the goal keeps moving, It's like, oh, no, no,
Accomplishments.
yes. Instead of simply saying, I appreciate doing this. I I I appreciate it. I'm with it.
Well, I
I'm not gonna.
also, if someone is um, a person who acknowledges and wants the presence of God in their life, as I do, what I say is, okay, God made this life. God, God orchestrated. This is like the flute. God orchestrated it. This is the flute. The flute was playing for me yesterday, and the violin's going to
Mm,
be playing for me today, and the oboe maybe on Thursday or Friday.
don't you love it when we get the drums though?
Right. But it's not my failure that
That's
I
right.
was stuck in my ego all day long. It's
Yes.
it's the way the soup was made. The soup of life was made by a
Mhm.
very wise creator. Um,
Absolutely.
but by the way, when I say a wise creator, I don't have a clue. I mean,
Right.
this life is so complicated, amazing, um, painful, joyful. I don't have a clue.
It's exquisite.
It's exquisite. Within all those good and bad things, it's exquisite. And you know
Absolutely.
what? I don't need to have a clue. I just want to fall into God's arms and say, you're in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds easier than it is,
I
sadly,
can do it
for
for
me.
about 10 seconds.
10 seconds, you're up to that much of it. You're a darn pro.
Maybe 8 to 12 seconds.
Whoa. Whoa.
When I say falling into
Yeah,
God's arms. Now, when I
yeah.
when I when I get my consciousness of God during an average day, I'm probably talking about 3 or 4 seconds out of 24 hours.
Yeah.
But those 3 or 4 seconds are unbelievable in their magic.
And you know what I'm thinking, Chris? I'm thinking that that's what we say, because when we say 3 or 4 seconds, we're talking, I think I'm talking about like a sense of forgetting myself, like sort of forgetting myself. Okay. Now, who's to say though that all of those other seconds upon seconds upon seconds that I also forgot about myself, but I'm not aware of it. Because I think this sort of ultimate sense of presence, that as soon as you notice it, it's gone thing, that's a gauge. I mean, that's one of the, that's on the continuum of presence. I think during this course of this exchange that you and I have had, that I've forgotten about myself here and there. I mean, if I think about it, if I, take my lens out and give myself some inspection. So, I mean, if it's happening here in this time and place, then when I'm patting my cat, perhaps I forget myself, or when someone needs me, I forget myself. Or when I'm in that worry spot that you talked about, where it feels like you're not forgetting about yourself at all, that in fact you are forgetting about yourself, your real self.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this lens. I remember I went to a spiritual director years ago, and he said to me, your lens is so small. It's so small. Can you widen your lens? And I'm like, widen my lens? What? He says, give yourself a break, So, I think that, I think we're always doing it at some level. We're always being present. It just is this perfect presence that we want to achieve in meditation. Maybe we don't need to do that. I mean, I'm not saying give it up. I'm saying meditation's wonderful and it's a great practice, because that busy mind that you spoke about that haunted you yesterday doesn't sound like a heck of a lot of fun or even valuable. But maybe it is. Well, maybe we're just so determined to grade ourselves that we might as well always have the dunce cap on, except for 3 seconds a day. We can take it off. Beeps. Here I am. So I'm just putting that out there, because as I'm listening to both of us, I'm sensing that we need to give ourselves more love.
Yeah, more love,
Compassion.
more compassion, more kindness.
More kindness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loving
I think
kindness. That the
that's,
Buddhists have it right. Loving kindness is their tagline,
yes.
their brand line. Loving
Yes.
kindness. And it's a
Yes.
beautiful thing. It's you I don't think you can lose with loving kindness.
I don't think so either. And the Buddha also said, life is suffering.
Yeah.
He didn't say life is suffering and that's a big waste of time.
Well, right. I mean, you and I have both had severe suffering in our lives that was part of the recipe for um, our bliss.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely for our coming together.
Yes.
And, saying that in the compost lies something holy. I think you
Yeah.
said that, Chris.
Yeah, the alchemy. I mean, I was just looking at my compost heap yesterday, which as you know, I'm obsessed with compost. I now have a liquid compost that I have a little pitcher, a juice pitcher in my kitchen. And when I'm rinsing out the vegetables, I pour the liquid into there and then I put it in the garden. So I'm obsessed with these things. But
Yes.
what I did was I cut off my zucchini at the end of July or August, whenever they died. I cut it off at the roots. There was no roots at all. Threw it in the compost. And I look at it the other day, and there are these bulbs that are coming out of the yellow flower that normally produces the zucchini. And so I'm like, what? What is that? And I'm Googling it, and I'm asking my friends. And
That's great. That's
yeah, so
great.
the compost again, it's the slimy, stinky garbage that we throw in a pile, and a year later it's gold. It's what gives our vegetables the nutrients that sustain our body.
Totally.
It's
Thus,
magic.
thus, your day of self recrimination is the holy compost. None of it goes to waste. If it can be true of those plants as they're dying,
Right.
it's true of us.
Right. And when my mother was drinking so badly, and it was a horror show for 10 years. And then she got
Mhm.
into AA. The person that came out of that time in the 12-step program was more relaxed, more understanding, more forgiving,
Acceptant.
more more um, available to the holy in her life.
Mhm.
And could I don't know anyone who can explain that.
Yeah. I'm thinking that, Chris, the whole deal is holy compost.
The whole deal.
The whole deal.
And
Yeah.
and what we miss in our culture is the fact that the smelly, slimy, stinky um scraps that we don't want, that's what makes the gold.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just is it, compost is fascinating to me, and I think it's because it's so holy. It's so holy.
And it's such a I want the word I'm coming up as universal, but that's not the word I want. It's the epitome of this life. Compost. It's all compost. It's all rotting. It's all being reborn.
So
it's
I've got a
dying.
question for you. I couldn't agree more with that conclusion. So what what is it about? How can we? So some people just see their life as a waste.
Mm, mm,
They have nothing but regret and remorse, even though maybe they're very hostile or angry demeanor,
mhm, mhm.
or maybe they're very egotistical, and so they look like they have it all together, but inside they're just full of what they deem to be failure.
Yeah.
So how do we get the message across to those people that it's all working for what's the scriptural, it's all working for the best or the good or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is that the measuring stick or the grading system is slightly off kilter, because it's based on it's based on the externals. When it's the externals are just superfluous, they're meaningless. They're really meaningless, in the long run, or in the short run even. So the way we'd help people is to assure them that what has happened in their lives is not about them.
Mm.
Not about them. It's about what happened in their lives. And so, and to come away from that story, that narrative, that because you now live and people live in cardboard boxes in this nation, great nation of ours, that what is the thought that they have? They have, I don't know what exact thought is, but I'm going to guess failure is
I'm
there.
no good. Yeah.
Didn't, don't matter, don't count, among whatever. That is a good question. How do we change that narrative, that very societal narrative about you're only good as you look?
Or as the externals,
Yes,
you're only as good as your externals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
my mission is to preach self-love, holy self-love,
yes.
which has nothing to do with selfishness or me first, and
Yeah.
everything to do with recognizing the God that lives in my being and wants expression.
And along with that, I would add, and that I am you and you are me.
Right.
Like we are one.
Right.
Like that connected. I think that this individuality culture that has grown this country has actually ruined this country. And I don't know all the ins and outs about it, but like the Scandinavian countries, for some particular reason, I'm not sure what, culturally are very cognizant of the connection between the infant and the old person that's dying.
Mm-hmm.
They really get that. And I hope if I come around again, like, I don't know, that would be a belief that we would talk about much, but if I come back from the Stardust, and I'd like to land in Finland next time. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to be in Norway, so we'll be neighbors.
Yay! Yay!
And for no good reason. I mean, Finland we find too.
Yeah, any of the three is fine. I
Give me
just
a
choose.
fjord or two and some mountains, and I'm happy.
And the Lapland. Don't forget the Lapland,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
in the midnight sun and all the rest of that.
yeah,
Yeah,
Have
we
you been
we
there?
can do with that. I have not. My mother's family was born in Finland, so that's the connection, and saw them as very stoic, complaining, very simple living people, and very community minded. Yeah.
Well,
So
I don't know about you. My heart is very full, and I'm very grateful for our time together,
me too. Me too. Very
as
much so.
always.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk soon.
Okay, my friend,
Sounds
signing
good.
off.
Over and out with Holly. Yeah, we're gonna get some kind of, we're gonna work on an end little piece that we say about the Holy Compost. We're not there yet, folks, but we're gonna
Well,
get there.
we're getting there.
We're getting there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chris.